Hola mi gente, I'm Mariana Atencio and welcome to the Mariana Atencio Show. I have a treat for you guys today. I am interviewing this icon, this woman that is breaking barriers all over the country. I'm interviewing you here at the Faena in a little bit, so I thought I'd give you guys a sneak peek about this trailblazing journey that you're on, this mission. So Tamsen Fadal, she's an Emmy award-winning TV journalist, menopause advocate and best-selling author of How to Menopause. And this is the book that is really revolutionizing the lives of so many women and men in America and the world. You're also a producer of the PBS documentary, The M Factor, Shredding the Silence on Menopause, and a leading voice in breaking the stigma around midlife transitions.
Thank you.
Para mi audiencia en español, esta mujer está cambiando lo que significa pasar por la perimenopausia, menopausia, posmenopausia. Esto les interesa a todas y a todos. So, Tamson, I know our time is limited. Let's kick it off. What inspired you to write How to Menopause and to share such a deep personal journey?
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on with myself, and it's what I wish I had. It's information that I wish I had in that journey. I had no idea what was happening with regard to menopause, with regard to symptoms. I was completely confused, and I wound up looking up, researching, talking to doctors, talking to experts, and started writing and interviewing people, and wound up with 42 experts in that book, so women could really take charge of their own health journey.
What were some of the symptoms that you started experiencing?
Oh gosh, I went with irregular periods, with this like that hallmark symptom of perimenopause, brain fog, which is you walk into a room, can't remember why you were there, read a word or try to read a word, it won't come out of your mouth. Hot flashes, obviously, night sweats, not being able to sleep anymore. I had all of these symptoms that now we would say, oh, maybe it's menopause. But then I was running around chasing all these different problems, mood swings, anxiety. So I dealt with each one of those individually, not knowing until I
and you were freaking out.
Yeah, of course.
She's a very well-known anchor. You're like the New York anchor. And I read in the book that you weren't able to even read the prompter.
Yeah, there was days I'd look at a word and I'd be like, I know that word, but I can't say it. I just skip over it. And that's scary. It's scary for any woman in any career, any part of their lives.
There's so much stigma around perimenopause, menopause, especially in the Hispanic community, which I speak to.
Yes.
What are some of the myths that you want to debunk here?
Yeah, I think the first one is that there's nothing that can be done about it, and this is just something that happens with age. That's not true. There are ways to treat it, whether it is hormonal or non-hormonal options out there. I think also one of the myths is it happens when you get older. It can happen when you're much younger.
Yeah.
And then everybody goes through menopause a different way. You could go through, I could be at 42 when I start perimenopause symptoms. You could be 48. And so it really varies depending on the person and the intensity of symptoms as well.
So the book, I love the sort of spin that you give it because you call it a girlfriend vetted guide.
Yes.
This is your companion. How did you make sure that the book feels personal, relatable, friendly when you're talking about this topic?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, and so I came from as being a journalist and just started asking questions. And I think that I really realized that I'm going through the same thing everybody else is. This is a community that has come together in so many different ways to say like, hey, it's not okay that we don't know what's happening with us and we want to know. And the most important part, and what I hope women will do, is take that book and go to their doctor. So if they feel like their doctor doesn't have that information or education, they can help them out, show them some of the information, and then they have the resources in the back as well.
So just for the women who are listening, what are some of the most common struggles, if you were to just list them?
Yeah.
And how does your book help women take control?
Yeah, I think one of the big struggles is, am I in perimenopause or menopause? I think that's the big question. And you can take control of that right now because you don't need to go into a doctor's office and get a diagnosis. You can look at your symptoms, and that's how you're going to be diagnosed. It doesn't have to be through a blood test. And then if you say, okay, I want to figure out whether or not it's going to be a hormonal or non-hormonal option, you can decide right now if you're going to use lifestyle changes to help yourself out in terms of those symptoms. And if you decide to go on hormone therapy, the book will help give you that information to guide whether or not that's a good option for you.
And it's amazing that even doctors sometimes don't know what's going on. It's taboo to find the right doctor for you.
It's hard.
And it's so common when you're dealing with just a regular gynecologist, when you're going through your period. This is something that you talk about with your mother and your friends, but not with menopause.
No.
your book and the fact that I was going to do this interview led me to ask my own mother, like, hey, Mom, when did you go through this?
Glad to hear that.
Really?
I'm so glad to hear that.
You are giving us permission to have these conversations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
All women should have permission to have this conversation. This is not something that means you're old. It's not something that means you're invisible. Your best years are not behind you. You still have great sex. There's all great things that can happen during this time, but you've got to be able to get hold of those symptoms and know what's going on. And that's more than half the battle.
And that is something really important that you've done also, is that you've made menopause sexy in a way. I mean, you got Halle Berry to post with it. Like all these women, you're like, wow, if she's going through it, maybe it's not so scary.
It shouldn't be scary.
What has that felt like, just to kind of turn it on its head and say, these women are not invisible. These women have a lot to offer. And by the way, for many of the people watching here, because I know many are, female founders, there's also a big business opportunity here.
Of course. Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. Well, I think, first of all, it's really important that we give menopause a face that is not a face of somebody that is just kind of given up. That's really important, first off, because you could be going through this a third to half of your life. So it's a long time, and you don't want to be suffering during that time. So that's number one. Number two, yeah, there's a big opportunity, and I hope that people take that as a big responsibility, right?
Yeah.
It's really important that if you're in this space or you're looking at this space, that you're providing women with the right kind of options. And there's no miracle pill. There's nothing that's going to fix it like that. But I think there are some great things that have come out of this, whether it's been different telehealth companies that have come out of this, different options that are non-hormonal options for women that can't do hormones. And so I think we're seeing some big changes come around. And I think it's going to be really incredible in the years to come to the younger generations.
It's insane to me that this hasn't come up before. And now this is the tip of the
I felt the same way. I still can't believe it sometimes.
Why is the diversity piece so important when it comes to this conversation, especially when it comes to women of color?
Yeah, absolutely important. I mean, look, women of color, especially Black women, often go through symptoms earlier and have more intense symptoms. And it varies, it just all varies depending on your age, depending on, when you go through it, when you start going through it, what those intensity of symptoms are and how they affect you long term. Because we're talking about brain health, heart health, and bone health. So it's really important. And it's important for us to also talk to people where they are, and that's what we want to make sure of. That's why I want it to be inside the workplaces, want to be inside communities. And it's important we get that message out everywhere, not just in the doctor's office.
Absolutely. To wrap, this has to do with lifestyle shifts. It has to do with self-care.
Yep.
What are some of the things that women can start doing right now?
Oh yeah, it's such a good question. Look, I think there's a couple of different things when we talk about bone health, because that's really big during this time. Last thing anybody wants to do is break something or fall. And as we get older, those are things that are fearful. Vitamin D, K2, if you're going to add some kind of supplementation.
I'm going to start.
They said you've got them all in the book. You could do a weight training, and I think that's really important, is to be strength training over everything else. And protein, a really big deal. Learning stress management, figuring out how to sleep the right way. And the book has a lot of sleep hygiene tips to make sure you start on those. You don't have to wait till you're in menopause to do that. You should be starting that as early as possible.
Final question. This is a process that can feel so isolating. This is why I wanted to make this interview available to my community. What are some ways in which we can build community around this issue and have more open conversations?
This is one way to do it, because you're opening up and you're sharing. That's a really big deal. We've got to shred that silence. I think another way is making sure that you bring it up wherever you're comfortable bringing it up. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that if we have a doctor that's not listening, to point that out. And I think talking about it with your daughter or sister or your friend or work friend, and start feeling comfortable with those words and not think that it's something you have to whisper.
Where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. Tamsen Fadal anywhere on social media, tamsenfadal.com, and the book, How to Menopause, anywhere you buy your books.
Ladies and gents, thank you so much. Gracias, mi gente. I love this. Thank you.